Hello, everyone. Welcome to 1000 Gurus. My guest today is my good friend Austin Lee. Woo, cool. Excited to have you here, Austin. You were on my short list of people I wanted on season one because we know each other through dance, and I really respect you and your career and your thought process. So I thought it'd be good to have you on the show. So let me just go into like what I know about you. We've been friends for a few years now. I know that you're born and raised in Hawaii. You study psychology at Stanford. You danced on several teams before, like hip hop and K-pop teams, and then eventually moved to SoCal. And then we met on our team, Choreo, is a K-pop dance cover team at UCLA. And we were two of the older guys on the team, more experienced. We had leadership positions before, and then during the team. And then now you work as a business analyst for a health tech company. Is that right?
Yeah,
Did I miss anything?
that's pretty much it.
Nice, cool. We'll get right into it. I just wanted to first topic is like school career. Getting into Stanford is I would say a pretty high achievement. I think it's something that a lot of people would like to go to. I think with our background, like in an Asian household, right? Like it's go to a good school, get a good career, and I think Stanford is like up there with one of the top schools in the country. So I guess walk us through that. I'm curious how you decided Stanford. Like, did you have other options? Why your choice of major? What was your plans at like high school, senior, or even junior? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all the same cultural assumptions that you were talking about of
Yeah.
just like um, Asian American household. Hawaii is also very Asian American dominated too in terms of the population. So it's not just a household culture, but I think the culture of Hawaii in itself. Um, and I feel very privileged to kind of have been like pushed in that direction because even from like elementary school, my parents put me in private school. They really valued education for my sister and myself, and we were in private school from elementary through high school. Um, and that's something I'm really grateful for because not a lot of folks had that opportunity, or parents who can or really care about that. So that's where I feel like I was pretty much set up for that success. And I don't know, I always did very well in school. I loved learning. I liked going to school. Um, yes, I worked hard, but again, I just happened to do very well in all subjects and really thrived in school. And yeah, going to college was always like a no brainer for me and again, my community. So, um, interestingly, when you ask like why Stanford, in ninth grade, we had to take like a college preparatory course where it wasn't anything super serious. It was just getting you as freshmen to think about like college and whatnot. And one of the final projects was you just had to pick a college to kind of do a little deep dive on and
Mm,
presentation on. And um, I mean, obviously, Stanford is a really well known school. Can't remember why I decided to pick it for that project. It wasn't necessarily like a dream school. It was just like oh, that's a really cool school
mm,
to research and present on. Um, but when it came time to start applying to colleges, uh, you know, senior fall, which is now like 11 years ago for
mm,
me, um, it was just one of those reach schools that was on my list. At the time, it wasn't necessarily like my top choice because I thought I wanted to go to like a more small, private liberal arts college.
mm.
Maybe not like a Ivy League school or big name school, but that was more just a reach school.
Yeah.
Um, or stay home in Hawaii just for financial reasons. Um, but when it came time to deciding, Stanford was just able to give a lot of financial aid,
Mm,
which was very helpful. So that was, aside from its prestige, one of the main reasons was just like, well, it's either stay home or take advantage of this really great opportunity and also leave this island and kind of explore on my own. So that what is what it kind of came down to.
mm.
Just financial reasons and yeah. Um
So are you like on the fence between like so you're on the fence with staying in Hawaii or also like going out of state, like somewhere else?
Yeah, well,
Or
again, just because of the the cost, it would have just been
Right.
stay at home
Yeah.
and pay in-state tuition and then get scholarships at UH where my parents went.
Mhm.
Um, and that's probably where they wanted me to go because it's their alma mater and like of course parents want
Closer.
their kids to be
Yeah.
close to home. But I was just like, no, like I want to go out there and explore and just be queer and dance and sing more and see what's out there. Even though I was pretty sheltered, so
Mm.
that's kind of a big move for me. But that was kind of my motivation to be like, if we can afford it, please let
Mm.
me go. So
So you wanted to move out, but it was more like, okay, logistically, does this make sense?
yeah, logistically, financially doesn't make sense. And I guess every time I tell that story, it sounds weird because people are just like, why would your parents want to send you to Stanford? I'm like, I mean, I think it's more complicated than that too than just
Mm.
like uh the prestige. But yeah, it was the financial reasons. It was like, you want your kids close to home. I'm the oldest like child on like both sides, so
Mm.
like, that kind of dynamic. But um yeah, ultimately they let me go.
Yeah.
I think what also helped was like my best friend at the time in high school also got into Stanford.
Mm.
She was already actually gonna commit to MIT because she got in early and that was her dream school.
Mm.
But after visiting both schools, I don't know, she just liked Stanford better.
Yeah.
So I was glad I had a friend
Yeah.
and someone who I could already have a connection with going. So I think that also played into the decision as well. But um, yeah, that was kind of it. It's just preparation, privilege, luck, getting in, and then trying to make the case for the financial decision.
Mm, that makes sense.
Mhm.
So if you have the means to get there, right, then why not? And then you worked hard for it, but also you had, those elements of like privilege and luck and all that stuff. So you mentioned like liberal arts. So like but you study psychology. So like what directed you into the path of that? How did you get there? Was it like a
Yeah.
career sort of like oversight? Like you're thinking about, okay, maybe what careers I want to go to the major, or is it just that called out to you?
Good question. I mean, with psychology, I just knew it was a topic or field that I was just very curious about
Mm,
and really wanted to learn more about. Again, just like that hunger for knowledge.
mhm,
I wasn't necessarily thinking about like career
mm,
paths just yet. All my friends around me were like, "Oh, I know I'm going to be a dentist. I know I'm going to be a doctor. I know I'm going to be a lawyer." And I'm like, I don't know what I wanna do, but I hope that if I just keep pursuing school and doing well, it'll happen and I'll be happy. Honestly, I still feel like I'm trying to figure that out. But to answer your question, I just knew as a topic I was really much interested in. Just from my own experience with mental health and like um, friends and families' experience with mental health and just wanting to learn more about it, just so I can be a better, friend or family member, or maybe professionally even become like a counselor or therapist or something.
mhm,
But that was just a general idea. I just was like, I think that's what I want to study. I'm going to commit to it. And when I got in, that was really the only major I tried, and
mm,
turned out I loved it. So it was a great choice. But yeah, didn't really do much exploring. I just kind of knew that's what I wanted to study.
okay. So nothing arts related was calling to you as like major to study.
No, I think when I said like the small private liberal arts colleges,
Yeah.
I was thinking more of just like assumptions of just, like, the culture or,
Mm,
like, hanging around with a bunch of, like, super political lefty hippies.
mm,
Not that that doesn't exist at Stanford by any means,
right.
of course, but, um, you know, do these colleges have, like, queer studies or, like, LGBT studies or women's studies, which, of course, Stanford also does, but, um, again, with my limited knowledge as a junior at the time, that's what I was, like, thinking about and, like, wanted to pursue. But on the other hand, again, I'm just like, well, they don't have a lot of financial aid, or the folks who go there are usually pretty wealthy already, so they
Mm,
can afford it. So I was not really thinking about that when I was applying. I was just going off of vibe. Um, so yeah.
okay. So I guess for those who are in the process of trying to figure out their major or their college or like their career in any of those like phases, um, I guess I know you're the takeaway that I've gotten so far is like, okay, so I feel like this was psychology was interesting and I got into this really good school. We'll see how it is. I like the vibe of the campus. And you'll see how it goes and then you end up liking it. Um, would you advise students in those early stages to do the same thing? Kind of like, okay, just figure out like, what calls to you and then you'll figure it on the way? Or is it better to try to nail that down beforehand? Is it even possible to nail it down beforehand? We have those friends who are like, I knew I was gonna be a doctor since I was 11, or I knew I was gonna be a lawyer, or engineers make a lot of money, so I'll just do that, right? So,
Yeah.
like, do you have any recommendations on how to approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on the person, right? And like that's such a cop out answer, but I was growing up always really jealous of those people who are like, "Oh, I know I'm going to do this," or even if they necessarily didn't even want to do it, they're like, "I can hack it. My parents need me to be a
Right.
doctor, want me to be a doctor." I'm like, "Wow!" Like again, I had the privilege of like exploring and just
Mhm.
trying to figure out what I want to do, but I was just like, "What's my calling?" Or like, I just want to plan. I just want to plan. I want a path. Like cut and dry just because again that's the kind of environment we grew up in and it's very vulnerable to feel like I don't know what I'm doing. But luckily I'm still good in school, so I'll just keep going with that, I guess, and
Mhm.
try to figure it out, which like I said I still feel like I'm doing that. But my advice would just be, I mean, if you're one of those people, I mean, that's great if you know exactly what you want to do and you know the steps to get there, or even if you don't, like research the steps to get there. And um as long as it comes from a place of like authenticity, I
Mhm.
think is the key. So whether authentically like I want to be a doctor at 11 years old, great. Like, take all the courses or interview people or make connections, join organizations, volunteer. Like that's all good. Or even if you're not sure, authentically committing to like trying to figure that out and explore. I feel like I could have done a lot more exploring growing up. I kind of always just stayed in my lane, which is just like school and then performing arts. Um, but luckily it worked out for me in terms of like what I wanted to do and what I was passionate about with psychology and healthcare, and still being able to dance and whatnot on the side. But yeah, just committing to again whatever path that you set out for yourself, or committing to exploring and putting yourself outside of your comfort zone to explore. If you're not sure, I think that's my advice. Also, again, because I applied for college like 11 years ago, it's just getting harder and harder every year and more competitive every year. But I think the thing that stays consistent in like what these institutions are looking for, again, is just like that authenticity, that passion, that uniqueness or drive in whatever you do, whether it is something like more traditional, like being a doctor, or less traditional, like performing arts. But yeah, that would be my advice, but I really do feel for the kids right now because I'm just like, man, it's like just getting harder, more
Yeah.
competitive. The world is crazier. Like, I don't know if I would be able to get in right now
Right.
if it was like, yeah, I was applying right now.
In current times. So basically, what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, standing out, there's a part of it that is being authentic, finding out like what you're passionate about, or maybe like how your brain functions, how what you're geared towards, and that'll help you stand out. Obviously, on top of like working hard and having that combination of luck, probably. Um, but that comes from probably like self awareness, right? Because I think maybe most people don't know this, but even when you're students, when you're college students, and then you're in the working force and you're an adult, we're all still just trying to figure ourselves out or figure things out. Um, but I guess it's that pursuit of like, okay, well, just figure things out. You might know what you want to do, but in college you might not, and even in the workforce you might not. But you're still trying to figure yourself out, and that's like kind of important.
Yeah, and that's where I always remind myself where the privilege comes in to be able to just
Mhm.
work towards that self
Right?
actualization,
Have the
or
time and space to do that.
yeah, exactly, and like have safety nets if you fail.
Mhm.
So that I always remind myself, and I'm grateful for, and that not everyone has the opportunity to do that. Um, and then specifically, I guess if someone were to ask, like, well, what content did you put in your application to stand out or
Mhm.
show the stuff that you were passionate about?
Yeah.
Um, I remember just putting a lot of my like clubs and activities. So like my choir, my a cappella, or my barbershop groups, or my musical theater groups, my hip hop and K-pop dance, and then my feminist club and LGBT club and like LGBT organizing I did outside of school too. So I think statistically that's different than maybe a lot of stereotypical applicants.
Okay.
So I feel like I stood out in that way, but I think when I go to narratives, it's all about like your essays as well. So there was a prompt that was just like, tell your story. And I think I just told my story of growing up like queer in like an Asian American Catholic household and trying to navigate that, and how that led me to what I wanted to study and what I wanted to hopefully do in the world, even if I had a very general, vague idea of what that meant. So that's where I always come back to, like, if I can give advice, it's just working towards figuring yourself out, or if you already know, great, but like committing to that authenticity. Cause I think people can smell when like you're being inauthentic or you
Mhm.
have ulterior motives. And Not that being ambitious is bad, it's just, like, for me, it's always been about feeling authentic and feeling lucky that I have the freedom to explore that, but yeah,
Right,
that's my 2 cents.
of course. So something that's curious, I think, is you mentioned, there's a lot of things that you're passionate about and all the things you have in your application. A lot of art stuff, right? And then, but studying psychology, and then what you do now as a career. I want to ask either like, what are you passionate about, or is there a like a divide or a decision between pursuing a passion for a career or choosing a career path like psychology? Like you said, you didn't really know what that was leading to. You just knew it was interesting. But then you probably could have done something else, right? Like dance or theater or something like that. So how do you how did you reconcile that, or what advice would you give for people who are in the similar situation where it's like their career and passion aren't necessarily the same thing for you? But how do you make that decision?
Yeah, I think if I could go back in time, I would recognize that performing arts is my passion,
Mm,
and I should have tried to pursue that a little bit more seriously. I think what kept
like
me from that
before college.
before college,
Okay, yeah.
like way before college,
Mm,
because everyone knew me for that and knew that that was what I was passionate about. Yet either because of the environment we were growing up in or the narratives that we hear about performing arts, I was just like, well, that's just a side hobby. Like I don't I'm not going to pursue that professionally, even though I spent most of my time doing all that stuff, outside of school too. But um, the other thing I tell myself is like, well, also people were telling me like, well, it's lucky that you're multi-talented. Like some people only have that one thing and that's the thing they're going to pursue.
mm,
Again, half of which I'm kind of jealous because I'm just like, oh, that's great. Like you have a path. Like I want something clear cut, but that's not how life works. But anyway, again, in hindsight, I wish I pursued that a little bit more, meaning like more classes or technical training. I kind of just did it for fun, joining clubs and whatnot, and did it that way. So when it came time to apply for college, even though some people were expecting me to pursue performing arts, I was like, oh, I'm surprised you
mm,
thought that because I didn't really think that or see that for myself. Like I feel like I know people more talented than me or who have the training and the right background and maybe that's just coming from a place of feeling like you need to have all those stepping stones in place to
right.
pursue it. But um, yeah, I it is something I kind of regret, but I still get a lot of fulfillment out of what I do now with psychology and health and
Mm.
tech. Like it tickles a different part of my brain, I guess. But um, yeah,
Yeah, we love tickling our brains. So yeah, that's actually a good segue. I wanted to ask about that. So your career, right? You work in health tech, and it seems like you really enjoy what you do. I guess I'm curious. Maybe walk us through like a quick snippet of like what do you do? Like, what's your career narrative? And like I said, I assume that you enjoy what you do, but then for people who are interested in maybe health tech, how do you break into that, or what would you advise?
I know. I feel like it's gonna be a similar story of just like
Yeah,
I just
you
kind of
just did
bumbled
it, and
my
then
way
here it
into
goes.
it, and then of course that's where I understand that people are really upset or jealous of that, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Um,
Honestly, same. My career was like that too. It was like I wasn't planning on doing what I do, but I just fell into it. But there are things you can do to get to that point. Like you're
totally.
prepared, you get ready, you're intentional, because you can't walk through doors you're not ready for, right? But yeah, continue.
No, totally. Oh, and intention is such a great theme and word to think about throughout all of this too. But yeah, with like a career path. So, like I said, when I applied to college, I was like, okay, psychology, like maybe therapy, counseling. So maybe halfway through my undergrad at Stanford, they have a peer counseling program called the Bridge Peer Counseling Center. And that's a 24/7 service that's open to technically anyone, but mostly undergrads and some grad students call in as well. And you have to take a formal course and then do some training, pass a test and everything, and then you can take shifts or even live in the house where they provide those services.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, it was a really cool experience and was just I don't know, like, a little peek into what it would be like to kind of serve in that function, and I think I learned pretty quickly that I'm like, "Okay, that's a little bit too much stress for me
Mm,
to, like, be someone's lifeline and, like, talk to strangers when they're at, like, their most desperate or dire state."
mhm.
When I think what I wanted to do was more just learn the skills for when it comes up in, like, everyday life or, like, talking with friends or family that you know a little bit better to help
Right.
them, like, talk through their problems.
Not like a crisis sort of situation.
Yeah, that's just a little bit too stressful. And whenever I talk to like my psychology mentors or people who are actually therapists and whatnot, they're like, "Oh, in grad school, they'll teach you how to like compartmentalize or like, just have the right mental state for that." But I'm like, I don't know. So I think that's when I pivoted to research, where I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily have to be patient facing, or providing the therapy, but it's still related to psychology. Pushing the field forward, just doing some really cool research. I was in a lab about personality and cultural psychology. So looking at the different ways in general that East Asians, Asian Americans, and European Americans and white Americans value emotions. And my other lab was more clinical. It was a depression and suicide and sleep lab. So those are my topics of interest and how I stumbled into like the health tech field. I was working in those labs for the first year after I graduated from Stanford and was like, okay, before I commit to grad school, which is a scary beast in itself, let me see if I can sell out or let me just see if I can hack it in the tech space
Mm.
or industry space, just because otherwise I felt like I didn't know if I could make it. Like I thought grad school was the only option, academia was the only option. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I feel pigeonholed a little bit. So let me try to explore that. So I really went out of my comfort zone. I saw that there was this mental health tech company that was going to be at a data science career fair at Stanford, and I was like, okay, that's not my thing, but I'll just put myself out there because I'm
Yeah.
desperate right now to just try to see what's out there. So I went and I said, hey, I know you're looking for like more data science people, but I also saw that you had this opening for more of a like care representative for your
Mhm.
patients, and they were like, oh yeah, talk to the manager, and because they're a small, scrappy startup, like they were hiring super fast, so that was just kind of my foot in the door of just like, "Hey, I do research at Stanford." They were like, "Okay, cool. Come on board. Can you start next week?" I'm like, I need to give a 2-week notice, but I'll try." Um, so yes, having the psychology background helped, having the research background helped, having the Stanford brand helped, even though I didn't necessarily like plan it that way. Those seeds were sown and I kind of like
Mhm.
that kind of helped me get
Got
into
it.
that position. So yeah, that's how I kind of got there. It's just like amalgamation of all my different experiences and
Mhm.
just the luck and the
A
opportunity
little bit of desperation.
and desperation. Yeah, to push myself over my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I kind of got into that space.
Okay. So then, like, is there anything specific that you want to share, like what you do, and then I know you said okay, breaking into the space, we covered that, but
Yeah.
I don't know, like, what have you like learned working in that space? I guess is like what I want to know.
Yeah, I think uh, um well, for myself, I think I always kind of looked down on industry because I was just like, "Oh, there isn't a place for me," or like, "I'm gonna stay in my comfort zone with academia and research." But also very curious about that space as well,
Space being health tech or
health
tech?
or tech and industry in general.
Gotcha. Mhm.
Um, and I think I learned that I thrive in that environment.
Make a lot
Again,
of
I've
sense.
only been in like smaller startups, so it's like new every day. Like I said, it tickles a different part of my brain. Even though I love structure and I love predictability,
Mhm.
it's also that other I don't know, excitement part of the job of
Mm,
just like every day's different. Everyone's wearing many different hats, doing many different things, solving many different problems as they come up versus like, okay, you just clock in every day, do the same
right.
thing every day. So I think that's what keeps me engaged and motivated, as stressful as it is sometimes.
Mm,
Um, and now in more my day to day, I've kind of branched away from doing more like customer work or patient work and now doing more sort of back office stuff, but more like strategy and insight. So using
mm,
data to help make day to day decisions or longer term strategic decisions. And again, I'm like, with what credentials or what background, but kind of like picking from
yeah.
my research background, my psychology background, some of my like community leadership skills from like my dance and performing arts or community organizing backgrounds has kind of paid off. Even though I think in the back of my mind, I still feel a lot of imposter syndrome of just like, well, I didn't really study this in school, or
Yeah.
like, who am I to do all of this? But again, like, I mean, people are trusting me and saying I'm doing a good job, so I guess I'll just take that. But yeah.
Cool. So it's just like, so you're saying you're just figuring it out as you go. Obviously, you're doing a good job there and you enjoy it, but like, I guess the takeaway that I think I'm hearing is that like, you pull from past experiences and you try to do your best work, but it's okay if you're still in that mental space once in a while where you're like, okay, I don't think I belong here, but I'm at least I'm here, I'm doing good work and I'm figuring it out as I go. And that's okay. You don't need to be always like 100% ready for that next thing. But you kind of just went into it and now you're you're doing well.
Yeah, and that's where I'm a little envious of folks who know exactly what they wanna do and the steps they need to take to get there, and there definitely are career paths that, are like that. But for me, it's more just, okay, still being vulnerable, still trying to figure things out, maybe fake it till you make it a little bit, and still trying to figure that out. So, like you said, like, "Oh, it seems like you're kinda happy where you are." I'm like, "I guess, but I'm still gonna work towards, like, trying to figure out, like, what I could do,
Mhm,
that will make me feel even more fulfilled,
mhm,
but also just being okay, not again being complacent, but just being okay with where I'm at, not, like, feeling down on myself or, like, shaming myself, but just like, "Okay, you're not there yet," or, like, "You have no time to rest or feel confident or feel accomplished, like, you need to keep going." Just trying to find that balance of just like, "Okay, let's not get too complacent if you're really that unsatisfied," but also just being grateful that, like, you have what you have and that you're working towards something. And maybe it's not career, maybe it's not your job. So that's also like another thing. It doesn't have to be your job.
mhm. I love that. It's like you're content with what you have, which is good because you don't want to have that mental stress of like, ah, this is terrible, right? But also the non-complacency slash a little bit of ambition, knowing that there is probably something better out there that's more 100% aligned to what you think your passions or your purposes. But it's like that middle ground. At least you're not suffering every day, but you still enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's pivot. I think you mentioned liberal arts and dancing and stuff like that. So let's go into this. So we both, like I mentioned, we both dance on a K-pop team choreos at a UCLA. Shout out, plug. Um, but yeah, I think it was interesting because for both of us, we both joined in like I would say for me it was like a second dance career because I had danced all in college and then a little bit retired, came back, and then now joined the K-pop scene.
Hmm.
And I think you have a similar sort of background where you did in college as well, and you started working as well, and then you kind of came to choreos, and then we were both like two of the older guys on the team and had danced before, and it's like a new environment. And I'm sure maybe your experience is similar to mine, which is like, oh, all these young college students, and they're just like wide eyed about the whole world, and we're just like, okay, well, we're just here to dance, and we've seen this before. And then the next year after that, we both joined leadership, and then we directed the team together for a year. Um, so I guess my experience was like it was a lot of fun, but I would say like what was your experience like? And I guess I want to lead to like leadership as a topic, but like so what was that like for you?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I like danced as a hobby in like high school and then definitely more seriously in clubs at Stanford. And then the year after I graduated, I joined a competitive hip hop dance team in the community called Straight Jacket in the Bay Area. And even though I was only there for a year because soon after the pandemic happened and then work picked up a lot, so I took a step back. But um, that was a lot of fun doing a lot of traveling, learning more hip hop foundations and history, which I think are very important. And being able to compete in World of Dance Championships in LA that summer in 2019 was super cool. And then, like you said, kind of took a break or hiatus because of work, because of burnout, and because of the pandemic. But when I moved to SoCal, I switched jobs into the job that I am in now. And then I was like, okay, I have more free time. I really know I want to get back into dance. And I live so close to UCLA. And I always knew about choreos because, they were like the biggest college or just dance team in general for K-pop, like in college. So I went and like you said, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many like young
Yeah,
kiddos
I
here.
know. Yeah.
Even more so because lots of folks moved away or left after the pandemic. Cause in my head, I was like, oh, I know they take outside folks and like it looks like there's a good mix. But when I joined, there's just so many just young students that I
Yeah.
was just like, oh, okay, I feel a little awkward. I also don't wanna overstep by saying like, "Oh, this is how things should be run." I was
Exactly.
just like, "I'm just here to dance and have
Same.
fun," like, so, yeah, that was my first impression before I was on leadership.
Mhm. So I guess going into it, as a leader for the team, I know we've been through a lot of like, trying to figure out the team, trying to make it better, trying to improve it. Any hard earned lessons that you would want to share about leading an organization like that? Maybe dance team, sure, but specifically, like an organization like that where you have a common goal and you have personalities, it's 30 plus people, right? I mean, we can probably have so many stories about that, but any like takeaways on being a leader on how to run a team?
Yeah, I mean, even in the workplace too, or any, like, group of people that you're trying to organize around a common goal, which is
Mhm.
very hard.
Mhm.
Psychologically, we're all different, we all have different backgrounds and, like, different motivations and interests, so it's so hard to, like, organize people around a common goal whether or not there's like incentives like salary involved.
Mhm, of course.
So interesting when we think about leadership, I'm like, I don't know if I ever really wanted to be a leader. I always just kind of fall into those positions. I know some people really want those positions,
Right.
but I'm just like, I don't really want that
Yeah.
responsibility or like the backlash, or you can't please everyone. And I hate that as a people pleaser, but I'm like, that's the part that I kind of hate. It's just like
You can't
dealing.
please everyone? What?
No, like as much as I want to, like you can't make everyone happy. You kind of just need to like align the team around the common goal, and whether or not they jive with that, they all have to agree that that's the goal of that organization. Otherwise, they can leave or they can become leadership and help try to change it or mold it. But like, um, you just have to organize a team around a common goal, and you might not be really thanked for that job, but that's kind of what is needed in a leader. So yeah, I do find some joy in it and accomplishment in it, but it also can just lead to stress and burnout as well.
Definitely. So I think I was gonna say, I think there's that one saying where it's like, leaders will, you know, uh, they don't get any of the credit when things go well, but then they get all of the blame when things, don't go. They get the blame when things don't go well.
Yeah.
But they don't get the credit when things do go well. Would you say that kind of aligns with your experience? I don't know. If that's too leading of
No,
a
I
question,
think so. I think so. In both work
yeah.
and
But then,
like,
so I guess the question is, well, then why do it? What's the point?
then why do it? I think for me, it's because it's the be the change you want to see in the world kind of
Yeah.
a thing of just like, oh, okay, I hear a lot of these complaints on the team, or like I see issues that I think I have some solutions for, or I would like to work towards a solution for the problems that people are bringing up.
Right.
So I think that's what motivates me, is just wanting to make things better, and maybe having some level of confidence that I know how to do it, or I know how to get the right people together to do it. Um, Otherwise, I'm still pretty introverted and shy, so I wouldn't really want to step up in those situations. So yeah, it's just about like wanting to make things better or wanting to find solutions for problems.
Right. What do you think makes a good leader? Any any like clear characteristics or
Yeah, I mean, I think
thought
it really just
processes?
depends on the context, or
Yeah.
like what the organization needs in a leader at the time, even if it's not necessarily what the group members want or need, and that's like a separate problem. But I think it's just listening to the people that you're leading,
Mm,
and organizing again that group of people around a shared common goal, which again I think psychologically is very hard to do because we're just so many different people. Even if we have the same passions or backgrounds, like again, we just have different wants, needs, and different magnitudes, or of those wants and needs. So um yeah, I think just listening to your people that you're leading, because they're putting a lot of trust in you. But then also knowing with your own integrity, like what's best for the organization or the common goal. And as much as you can, trying to see if those two things align, like what the people want versus like the best for the organization. But yeah, I think it's just always having to navigate that line is just what a good leader should do.
mhm. Yeah, I like that. I guess last thought on leadership is like I think about this a lot. I think still being on choreos and still being one of the leaders, one of the directors is like longevity, right? In an organization. I think that's what a lot of good leaders are thinking about. It's like, how do I make this organization last? And I think my philosophy is that a big part of it is leadership, right? Because the organization is like top down, meaning the culture that the leaders have is what the team's going to have. And I think organizations, businesses, companies, whatever, they want to create an organization that lasts, that has value, that has an impact. Are there any thoughts on how an organization can orient towards longevity to promote their organization, to grow it, to reach a certain goal, but to last? More importantly, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of your big pillars, especially on the team, which is community. Especially if it's not like based on your livelihood or salary, like people are choosing to spend their time on the team or be with whatever organization they're a part of. And I think as humans, we're all naturally wired to want to connect with people and be social, no matter what your level of introversion, extroversion is. Like we want that community. I think there's some saying that's like the opposite of suffering is belonging.
Mm,
So we want that community. So like, which is why your role as like the director of like community is like very important, because we can have processes, we can have dance, we can have performances, but like if people don't feel like they belong or like they want to come to practice
right.
or rehearsals,
And why
like
be here?
yeah, then why be here? And there is going to be no organization to have longevity of, like it could be a great dance team, but if no one wants to show up, then it doesn't exist. So it's a balance of both. It's like you need processes, accountability, and structure, but then you also just need a sense of community and fun and wanting to be there.
Okay, so building in into that building in community and that purpose where it makes people want to be there, not because there's inherent incentives like necessarily monetary, especially an organization like this where it's all just for free, it's all just a hobby. But like that purpose, I feel like also translates into like a like the private sector and like the workforce, right? It's like people stay because of their coworkers or something, right?
True.
And it
Yeah.
could be toxic environment, and maybe the pay is okay, but sometimes people stay longer than they should because they like their coworkers, because they like the community.
Yeah. That's definitely a thing.
Hmm.
Um, for me with work, it's no, especially knowing that I have so many other interests, I'm more just like, okay, as long as I have something that can pay the bills,
Yeah.
and sure, I can like find maybe community orgs within my workplace, or just I do like that socializing with coworkers as well. But otherwise, I'm just like, okay, I'm just kind of there for a paycheck. And maybe that doesn't come across because people are probably still gonna say, oh, but you're still so passionate and engaged. I'm like, and maybe that's just me as a person, but
Right.
like otherwise, I'm kind of just like, I will do what I need to do
Yeah.
and then go do my hobbies outside of work.
Right.
Again, lots of privilege there too, but I'm just like, that's kind of my MO now, especially growing up and learning what the real world is like and just like, okay, let me not just throw myself into my job. Like that is gonna just lead to
Like super
burnout.
over
Yeah.
invested and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of the same as you, where it's like, I go to work to do my job and I will enjoy it and create a good environment, but I'm not so invested that that's my thing. And then I don't have things outside of that. I think that's a good recipe, I think, for risk mitigation, if anything, right? Because you
Yeah.
could leave the job anytime. It could go under, you could quit, whatever, and then you don't have that. But yeah, I like that. So I guess pivoting out of community, now let's go into. I think it's a fun topic. We've talked about this before at length. Um, with your psychology background, like relationships, dating, that sort of thing. That's one of my passions or of talking about is relationships because I'm a relationship coach. I'm like in the process of setting up my practice, but I love talking about that and especially in dating too. And I know you have some really good dating stories, experiences, which I think are really fun for all of your friends when you tell us about it and your journey through that. And how do we start this? I guess I don't know. Any advice do you have for the dating scene, or like how do you get into it? I know a lot of people want to find a partner. The dating space is kind of hard, especially nowadays with social media and dating platforms. It's a lot different than 10, 20 years ago. So like I don't know, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this deserves like its own
Yeah,
separate
part
talk and
2.
session, part two. But overall, I think my main advice with dating is, well, for me growing up, I don't know if it was because of the queerness and repressing a lot of that, but I just always really wanted to be in a relationship and I really wanted a partner and all of the fantasies around that. And to a fault, I think, because I didn't allow myself to like learn about myself or explore my wants or needs or learn who I am first. And at the end of every RuPaul's Drag Race episode, RuPaul is just like, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you
Oh,
gonna love someone else? And as corny as that may sound, and maybe there's like a spectrum of truth to that, I'm just like, for me, I think that is really true. It's just like a lot of the reasons why a lot of my past relationships have failed is just because I was just too codependent or overly dependent on them, or like I would just follow them around whatever they wanted to do, whatever they wanted to go, and kind of let myself be dragged around like that. Um, Without really knowing what I wanted, because I'm like, well, I have what I want. It's a relationship, so why am I not happy? Like
mhm,
this is so weird, or why are we having conflicts? Like it's like, well, because you're two individual people with different wants and needs, and if you don't talk about that or think about that or come to the table knowing what you want, then it's kind of a recipe for disaster. People can grow together and learn together and like be on the same page of that, but I think you have to be open and intentional about that instead of just letting it happen. So I think that's one of my biggest lessons is just like I needed to like learn and grow and experience the world myself to then be able to like start dating more seriously or successfully,
mhm,
whatever success means. But yeah, now I feel like I have a partner that, I can like grow with, and I also kind of know myself a lot more. So there's less like internal conflict there, I guess.
I love that. I guess 2 questions I wanted to go from there is either or. One, what do you think is the some keys to successfully finding a partner or like navigating the dating space? Like how do you find the right partner, right? Like I'm sure there's a lot of people that you could date, but I guess the more important thing is like how do I find the right person? And then second, I know you probably touched upon this a lot with like the self love and trying to navigating being with a partner, but also like what are the keys to sustaining a good relationship? I guess more specifically.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Some of my psychology research is coming back to me,
Nice.
which is why I think it totally deserves like a second
Yeah.
session. But like, in general, when it comes to okay, finding a partner, I think, we kind of have to segment by people's backgrounds and experiences because I think it's a lot different for heterosexual folks or versus queer folks, and even within the queer community too. Because I think some of the old psychology research says, for I'm assuming mostly heterosexual folks, it's just like, oh, they met through coworkers or friends, or like in person. Versus, again, I'm just going to speak from my experience. My dating life has been like 99% on social media or dating apps or platforms because otherwise I'm just like, how am I going to meet people? Even when I do my queer organizing or like try to put myself out there, I'm like, um, they're not gonna be single also, or they're not gonna be your type, or they're not gonna be into you, or vice versa. So I'm just like, okay, well, let me just like cast a wider net out there and like try to make it easier on myself. So as much as I like that opportunity in our day and age, it comes with its own stresses as well. But I think it just depends on your experience. And then finding a partner, that's where you have to know what you're looking for.
Mm.
I think when I was first starting out, I was just like, someone just please love me. And that's like
Just love
really
me,
bad
please.
and such a recipe
I'll
for
take
disaster.
anything.
I know. And then you're wondering like, well, why am I unhappy? Or why are we having so many conflicts? I'm
Yeah.
like, well, it's because you're just accepting of whomever. And that's not shade on that other person. It's just like you were not thinking. And also you're not evaluating that person. You're just viewing them as a partner,
Right.
not as their own person. So like, yeah, that's a lot of like stuff to navigate. But yeah, you just have to know yourself and what you want. And similarly too, you may not know exactly what you want, but being open to explore that with people and making sure they're on the same page as well, like that's fine and that's how you learn. But you can't just say like I want a partner and then just cling on to someone like I did.
Mhm.
um,
Lesson learned.
yeah.
So what about like sustaining a relationship? I
Mm.
know that you have relationship experience and you have all these hard-earned lessons. What do you think are the keys to sustaining a long-term relationship?
Personally, I think it's just the companionship. Again, especially in this day and age, you're choosing to be with someone. As much as I said, we're all wired for social connection. Society and right now the world is not really set up for that. So you kind of have to choose to seek it out and like really push through all the pain points to like stay connected with someone and all of their intricacies and their annoyances and all of that stuff. So I think it's just that companionship and commitment to each other, to say not like okay I'll put up with you, but more just like leading into that and knowing they're not going to be a perfect person and just like choosing to choose each other every day
Mm,
when it's so easy to just say okay I'm done with this or like okay I'm just going to hang out with my friends or just be single, which is totally fine.
mm,
You shouldn't just stay with someone if you're totally unhappy or not compatible, but I think it is just that daily commitment and that companionship. Once you get past all of the like fantasies or honeymoon phase, and if
mm,
that ideally that lasts forever too, but
right.
realistically, it most likely won't be. So yeah, I think it's just like the companionship and just like that connection with someone. Monogamous or polyamorous, like again, just like being open, honest communication, that companionship. Love is an action. It's you have to choose them every day, and that's something I'm still learning.
Mm. Yeah, I love that a lot. I think that's my philosophy with like dating and love and relationships too is like I think it's easy to go in with the lens of this is what love is. It's the honeymoon phase. It's the feeling of like I'm on cocaine, like that. And when you're younger and less experienced and you haven't gone through all of that, you're like, okay, that's what love is. And when I stop feeling it, I'm done, and this is the relationship that's over. But in my opinion, love is what happens beyond that. It's the choice, it's the action, it's the daily commitment, and it is hard because you're not always going to like your partner all the time. But it's an action, like you said, and it's a choice. And I think that's actually romantic. That's actually love. That's actually like a commitment. Because if love really is a feeling, then like it's gonna go away just like with your emotions, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think that's the right way to build a relationship. Um, but who knows? What do I know about this? I mean, guys, try it out for yourself. See what works out. But yeah, I totally agree, and I love that. All right, so let's wrap that up again. I think we'll have another episode of just love talks with Austin and Jr. Because we have so much on that. But let's go into the rapid fire questions if that's cool.
Yeah.
So first one is a billboard question, and I took this again from Tim Ferriss' podcast. So don't call me out on this. I like this question a lot. If you could put a sign up for millions of people to see, what would it say? And so I think the spirit of the question is like just a message to give out to everyone. It could be on any topic. It could be about yourself. It could be about the world. It could be philosophy, it could be a plug for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was struggling to think about this beforehand, but now I think it's really clear to me that at all echelons
Yeah.
of society, it's build community or foster community,
Mhm.
so that it's a give and take. Like make community and space for other people, but then also go out and like try to find your community because again, the society right now doesn't really facilitate that, and we have to really find all of our connections back to each other, um, which is not easy.
Mhm. Definitely. I like it. Favorite failure or something or a challenge that you learned the most from? I know you mentioned dating, and then I know like yeah, career, you're figuring out as you go, and then leadership, there's a lot of stuff there, but favorite failures, anything come to mind?
Um, I think a lot of it is very like general of just um as a perfectionist, I don't want to put myself out there. But that's how you learn and, learn fast, fail fast, learn fast, and move on. So I think I would say, yeah, a lot of my biggest failures is like relationships. Because you're going into it for the wrong reasons, or you don't know your true self or your intentions as well. And then you're putting a lot of pressure and onus on someone else. And this could be romantic or friends or whatnot. But yeah, I think it's just coming back to like being authentic and knowing yourself or committing to figuring out who you are. Um, I think is like been one of my biggest failures of just like, oh, I know who I am. And I'm like, no, you don't. You think you know who you
Mhm.
are. And then here's the consequences of that. So just taking the time to like do that work on your own.
Yeah. Um, if there's one thing that you could redo, you go back to first year Austin and Stanford, right? And, you go back to that point in time. Is there anything that you would redo? I know you mentioned like high school, pre-high school, like maybe pursuing art or singing or whatnot. But if you had to go back to first year, is there anything you would redo?
Oof. I mean, I think if it was beforehand, like you said, it would have been like more seriously pursuing performing arts. But if I was back in like first year Stanford, Austin, I think um yeah, just not being afraid to try new things. It turns out it worked out. Whatever I set for myself, I was passionate about, it
Yeah.
worked out. But like, what could have been, or just being more willing to explore other classes or majors or friend groups or hobbies. I kind of was just like, okay, I found my singing and dancing people, and then I'm good. And
Yeah.
then again, it worked out, but like that's not gonna always be the case.
Yeah. There could have been more potential for something else, like
Yeah,
your next favorite hobby.
yeah.
Um, Best piece of advice you've ever heard or been given?
I mean, I think just being authentic.
Mm,
Both me giving that advice to other people, but also like maybe past mentors or therapists telling me that it's just like it seems like you really value authenticity, and that's where you struggle a lot with like, should I stay in this org or this team or this relationship or this environment? Like, if it doesn't jive with who you are, then you need to figure that out and work through that, or just be okay with it. But you can't complain
mm,
if you're feeling stifled or like you're not completely authentic.
mhm. Like you know you're not being authentic, but then why complain about that? You could change it, but
Yeah.
aren't you? Isn't the point to try to align with your authenticity
True. Or just come to terms with it.
or come to terms with it?
Yeah.
Right? You're like, all right, this is what it is.
Mhm.
Any habits or routines that are key to getting the results that you have now? Are there any things that keep you sane? Things that you feel like you value? I think me personally, as a productivity nut, I love developing those habits to like put those things on autopilot. I don't know if there's anything that you have routines for yourself that you enjoy that you think keep you sane.
Um, I mean, one, I think having a routine,
Yeah,
period, whatever works for you, morning or
have a
night
routine.
routine. Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
really is. Like when you're like the most depressed or like the most stressed out, like
Mm,
if you can kind of put yourself on autopilot, it's like a ritual that you can do. And I'm really bad at this because like I don't really have that much of a routine except like I need my morning coffee every
mm,
morning and that's it. But otherwise habits, I'm just like, take care of your health.
mm,
It's not a given. Brush your teeth, floss every day,
yeah.
drink water, hydrate. Like seriously, like that stuff pays off.
Mm. So like those basic like okay self care, take care of yourself, your
Yes.
health, and all that stuff.
Yes.
But kind of just do that daily.
Do it daily
Yeah.
and then find your own routine and just stick to it.
Mm. Who would you call successful, and how do you define success? I don't know if that's the right order, but
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it. Like when I was thinking about this question, I'm like, I can't pinpoint any person. I mean, I can think of celebrities or even like people we know, but I'm like, if you know what you want and like know where you're going and like you set out and accomplish that goal, I think you're successful on whatever goal that is, on whatever level that is. Like, I admire that because I think that's what I also want too. And like, I think people would look at me and say I'm successful, which is cool and I appreciate it. But I'm like, if you just like know exactly what you want and you nothing stops you from getting that, then I think that's really cool and that's a success.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anyone that comes to mind that you can say like, "Oh, I think this person, I think they are successful because they do all those things," or celebrity or person you know? Is anyone that comes to mind?
Um, I I think there are, like, people in our lives, like, people on our dance team who are very
Mm,
much still students and, like, working towards something,
mm,
and I guess the distinction I also wanna make is, like, it's not necessarily that, like, okay, you pursue that thing and you got it. It's, like, the successful part is you still working towards that,
mm,
even if you haven't gotten there yet. I think that's what people forget a lot of the times, even myself. It's like, okay, maybe you won't be that, like, that doctor, but, like, if you keep striving towards it, like, kudos to you and, like, you never give up, and if that's what you still wanna do, sure, you could totally pivot if you want, but, like, again, I think it's successful to keep working towards your dreams. So I'm thinking about all those little pre-meds on our team.
yeah, exactly. They're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I gotta study."
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's the process, the journey that's the most valuable. You might not ever get to that
Mhm.
destination, but I think there's something that's admirable about making that progress because I think most people don't, right? Like they might think they do, but I think the hard work is in the process.
Yeah.
I agree. It's like, oh, you could just wake up tomorrow and be a millionaire. Are you successful? Like, did you work for it? Like, what was the process? Did you change because of that? I totally agree. On that topic, if time and money weren't an obstacle, what would you be doing right now?
Again, just, like, singing and dancing to my heart's content on my own,
Yeah,
producing my own content, or, like, teaching dance on the side, or just being a part of all the K-pop dance teams in
yeah.
LA,
More dancing.
yeah, spending time with my cats,
Yeah. You're a
adopting
cat.
more
You're
cats.
a cat daddy.
Yeah.
How do you spend most of your time?
Unfortunately, just work. I do have workaholic tendencies as much as I, like, sometimes, like, hate what capitalism has done to our society and everything, but I'm just, like, such a workaholic and, like, I just love having my brain work on topics or solutions, so lately, it's just been a lot of work. Summer is a busy season, especially after I took a step back from dance. I haven't really found the right way to incorporate that back into my life.
Mm,
So right now, it's just a lot of, like, dance, basic self-care,
yeah.
TikTok, social
Yeah,
media,
yeah.
my cats, like, I want to make more time for, like, something a little bit more fulfilling.
Mm. Don't we all?
Yeah.
All right. Last rapid fire question. Favorite books, movies, videos, articles that you share the most or recommend the most?
Um, I think in general, anything by Brené Brown has been
So
super
good.
impactful, yeah,
Mhm.
so she is a, you know, TED talker, psychologist,
Like author.
author,
Yeah, very
therapist,
good.
counselor, or social worker, excuse me, and she is just a great human being and individual,
Shame research, right?
shame
Shame
research, yeah,
research.
shame and vulnerability, and, like, again, how that is actually the key to resilience and connection and coming back to each other, as human beings, instead of, like, putting on a mask or putting on a persona, like, it's those shame, vulnerability, failures that actually make us more human and grow, so anything by her, her podcasts,
Mm,
her Netflix special, Call to Courage, I always rewatch that when I need, like, a pick me up or some
mm.
inspiration, but
How many episodes is that? Is it like one season or is it like a ongoing?
Her Netflix special is more just like a
Oh,
1
it's a 1
hour,
hour.
yeah,
Gotcha, gotcha.
special, and then, she has, I think, multiple podcasts
Right.
too, Unlocking Us and Call to Courage or Dare to Lead,
Dare to Lead. Yeah,
yeah,
I gotta listen
so
to it. I
definitely recommend those.
I read the most recent book I read for hers was I want to say Atlas of the Heart. Have
Mm,
you heard of that
mhm.
one? Yeah, actually, Shasi and I read it. Well, it's for her book club, but um, yeah, I plug to myself, Yonocruz.com. I do book summaries, and I love that book. It took me a long time to get through, but the you have you read it?
No, I haven't.
It's like it defines the different emotions, right? Like it's not just like the big four, like mad, sad, glad, afraid. It's like a pie, and there's like a little different segments, and it splinters off into things. But the key takeaway that I got is that if you can identify those different emotions that and like label them or like basically just identify them with these definitions, that's kind of hard to do. It's like, am I mad? No, I'm actually a little bit more frustrated and disappointed, and
Mm,
then when that's the first step to identifying where you are and then to take yourself out of that and then to navigate those emotions. But the first step that I took away is like the definition part of that. I was like, "Oh, okay. So when I'm in this mode of like I'm sad. I'm like, "No, I'm not sad. I'm just kind of like I don't know, like just it feels like I lost something, right? Like maybe that's not a feeling, but you know what I mean? Like it's that step first was an unlock for me. But it's very dense with information, so it's a good read, but it kind of takes a while to get through. But I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's super interesting. Because yeah, even in our like peer counseling, which is like you're not actually like a licensed therapist in that
Yeah,
moment,
yeah,
but a lot of it is really if someone's coming to you with a problem,
yeah.
talk about their feelings first and help them work through
Right.
that and identifying what feeling it
Yeah,
is.
because
Yeah.
it might not just be like anger. It could be something a little bit more specific to that, and then that can help you identify the cause of it, but also navigate you through that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, Brene Brown, really great. All right, any questions? What are you grateful for, Austin?
Just that thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of
Yeah,
needs, that most of my needs, or if not all, are being met. I'm just really grateful for that and having the privilege to work towards self actualization or saying, like, I want to do something more fulfilling, right? Because not a lot of people get to do
have the
that, or not
opportunity.
everyone does. Yeah.
Right. Do you have any final ask of the audience? Yeah, any final ask?
Um, I mean, if you know me, reach out, let's grab food
Yeah.
and hang out. I'm lonely working from home all day. And otherwise, if you don't know me, I mean, you could follow me on social media. I mean, all I do is just post the occasional cat video or dance video, but that's kind of it. Otherwise, in your own lives, find community, make space and community for others. That's just my ask for everyone.
Nice. So Austin is asking to find community with him, get food with him.
Yes, please. I love food. It's the
Nice.
tourist in me.
There you go. Cool. So where can we find you? I know we'll have links to everything that you want to share, but where can people find you?
I mean, I think the most public place is my
Instagram.
Instagram, Austin_Tatius. But again, not
Yeah.
much on there right
Right,
now.
right. You're like, it's there. If you want to reach
It's
out, go
there.
for it.
Yeah.
Invite me out for food.
Yes,
Well,
please.
cool. Thanks, Austin. I really appreciate it. It was a really good conversation. I personally learned a lot. Um, and so I guess just to sign off, thank you guys for listening, wherever you are. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something. Reminder to be kind to others and especially yourself. But also that there's always something that you can learn from someone. You just have to take the time to listen. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in.